Thank you for the introduction. I'm Ramon Lopez. I'm a principal solutions architect. I've been with the QuickSight team for almost 3 years now, with AWS 3 years. I've been in the BI space, analytics, reporting for most of my career before that. Thank you very much for joining. Good morning and good afternoon. So as Madison said, today we're going to be talking about patterns for deploying enterprise BI in QuickSight. So here is our agenda. I'm going to go quickly. This is a level 200 to 300 session. So expect me to kind of dive deep on certain subjects. We're not going to go into code. We're going to be looking at high level patterns. And maybe as a follow-up, we'll have a few deep dives into specifics based on this conversation. We'll use it based on demand. So please ask your questions and share your feedback, and it'll drive and help us decide on the follow-up sessions. We're going to do a really quick introduction to QuickSight. I assume most of you here know what QuickSight is already, but I just want to kind of hit on certain points and show some recently launched capabilities. We're going to look at some high-level use cases. We're going to deep dive into some common elements within those use cases, and then some shared patterns and deployment options. And the key thing is understanding the different deployment options and some of the differentiation between them. So Amazon QuickSight, what are we? Who are we? If you don't know, welcome. We are a unified BI service delivering generative artificial intelligence on BI, delivering modern dashboards, delivering pixel-perfect reports, and delivering embedded analytics, all within one platform. QuickSight was born on the cloud, so we're able to provide all of these different capabilities with consistent performance in any scale. We're talking tens, hundreds, or thousands of users concurrently and auto-scaling to meet your needs. You're going to find that with QuickSight, it is a lower cost solution, and there's different methods to optimize cost depending on how you're looking to deploy it. And ultimately, we're within the AWS umbrella. So we're going to find that it's a highly secure application, easy to deploy, leveraging policy-based governance so that you can entrust in putting all your users and all your data in an application to encourage analysis, insights, understanding the business, and making decision-making with data. So some of these capabilities that I talked about, first I mentioned how we have generative AI and BI in our application. So this is covered by a variety of different features, whether it's features for authors to leverage generative AI to create charts, to create formulas, whether it's for readers to answer questions, to build stories, to generate different scenarios, or whether it's for developers to embed all of these generative AI capabilities in your BI application or in your reporting application. A lot of capabilities under the Amazon Q and QuickSight umbrella that are changing the way that we interact with data. And we'll look at one of those specific capabilities that just launched today called scenarios. In QuickSight, not only can we do all that cool AI stuff, but we also are able to generate interactive dashboards that are beautiful looking, modern looking, fast performing, allow you to filter, slice, and dice your data. It allows you to access your data on any device at any time. It's going to allow you to refresh your data so you're always looking at the right data. And it's easy to use, whether it's the process of connecting to your data, designing an analysis, or sharing out of dashboards with hundreds of thousands of users. It can all be done with an easy low code, no code, drag and drop interface through QuickSight. We also have programmatic approaches, but the primary use case in Flow is to use our easy to use drag and drop interface. Not only can you build these beautiful dashboards, but you can take these dashboards and embed them in other applications, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But whether it's for internal facing purposes for your internal employees, whether it's for external, for your customers, your customers' customers, to have dashboards, to have reports, to have insights, QuickSight is built to allow you to design and deploy those components of applications very easily. We have SDKs in different languages that allow you to streamline that process and get those dashboards to the right people in a secure, scalable, and cost-effective way. And last but not least, we have what we call pixel perfect reporting, which is within the same interface, within the same application that we build those interactive dashboards. We're able to create highly formatted, multi-page PDF that includes these rich visuals that allow you to export CSV and Excel, that allow you to burst out reports to tens of thousands of users, each one of them seeing only their data without any need for additional infrastructure or new software licensing, and you only pay for the PDFs that get consumed, generated, and shared out. So there's a lot of legacy technology out there that is running these types of report distribution flows, and we're able to handle them with ease and QuickSight. So all these capabilities are nice. I'm gonna focus and hone in on something that is launching today. It's called QuickSight Scenario Analysis, and it's really an agentic way to empower any business user, any person that has access to data in QuickSight to ask questions and have AI answer back in a very, very detailed, complex way. This type of analysis allows you to start broad with a high-level question and create multiple threads or conversations with our agentic service. These conversations, these questions, these threads are very detailed. So what happens is you ask a question at a high level, or you pick one of our recommended questions. It's going to build out a multi-step flow to respond to your question. First, analyzing, understanding the data, and then doing some intermediate analysis, and ultimately supplying the answer to your question with some supporting facts, recommendations, limitations on the approach that was used to answer that question. Um, this is truly groundbreaking technology, and congratulations to the team. We're really excited, and I see it as a way to have an analyst in your back pocket that is able to do much more that any individual can, leveraging the power of large language models and some custom logic on top of it. So really exciting stuff. This is the type of technology that we're excited to continue delivering over the next year, leveraging LLMs and changing the way we interact with our data. Who is this for? This is, again, like I mentioned, it's for those business users. It's an alternative to downloading a file to Excel. And really, we're calling it out that it's 10 times faster than spreadsheets, because it eliminates that complexity, that workflow that I myself have put myself through over the last 20 years of downloading to Excel, um, doing complex formulas across multiple sheets, doing additional pivot tables, doing additional charts. It's a lot of work that you can spend hours going down rabbit holes in Excel. Today, with scenarios, you can just ask the question and let the large language models generate the code and display the charts for you, right in one simple to use interface built and designed for business users. So really cool stuff, really good reasons, whether it's interactive dashboards, whether it's pixel perfect reports, whether it's empowering with natural language query generation, or things like scenarios leveraging LLMs to answer analysis. There's a lot of reasons to deploy QuickSight in the organization. And we're going to talk high level about kind of some of those use cases that you would leverage QuickSight for, very high level. And I'm going to summarize it into two main categories, and they're very similar. It's because we're using the underlying technology to support both. First, you have your enterprise BI reporting and generative AI BI. So we're talking about interactive dashboards, pixel perfect reports, maybe even embedded reporting for internal purposes within an organization, within an enterprise, across different departments. And what is this doing for the organization? This is increasing a BI adoption and usage, is giving the tools to everyone in the organization to either read and consume some data that they should have access to, or to do analysis and work with raw data and convert it into the structure that you need, and building the analysis on top of it. Wherever you are across the cycle of building analysis, we're supporting that usage. This is going to open up for governed as well as self-serve analytics. So letting those authors or those consumers build what they need to build at a reduced cost. So we're talking here, whatever size organizations small in size, as well as large enterprises with tens of thousands of users, leveraging QuickSight across all those users to gain access to your insights. So that's your standard common internal analysis use case. Then we have the other scenario where we're looking at BI reporting and generative AI BI as a service. So we're providing these capabilities for other users. These users could be your customers, it could be your customers' customers, it could be other organizations that you work with, that you partner with. And it's about really giving those capabilities in a seamless way to your customers, being able to monetize, and whether it's for competitive advantage, for product differentiation, or for additional revenue streams, the data, and provide a service of analytics, a service of natural language querying, a service of some of those capabilities that you've seen already, all embedded within your application. And with QuickSight, it's easy to deploy. We're on the cloud. We have SDK, CLI capabilities. We have developer-built tools to allow you to take the BI, the reporting, and the generative AI BI features and make them as a service for other users. So with these two high-level use cases in mind, um, we're going to look at some common elements that you have to consider across all the use cases. So no matter what your use case is, you're going to have to consider user management approaches. So in user management, we're talking about how are you going to manage users within QuickSight. So the recommended approach and the most common approach that we're seeing trending with our customers is to leverage AWS Identity Center to help you streamline user management. So what does that bring to the table? So it's easy to set up with your own IDP. It supports synchronization of groups so that so you can manage authorization of assets and provisioning of users by role depending on your LDAP groups or your groups within your IDP. It also supports the integration between QuickSight and other AWS services. In particular, it opens up the door for what's called trusted identity propagation with, for example, Redshift. This entails defining your role level security at the source in Redshift and having the same identity that you're defining the rules for in Redshift be the same person that's logging into QuickSight and be able to apply those rules that you define in Redshift at the QuickSight user or group level without having to do anything in between. So that tighter integration that's brought forth with Identity Center is going to allow us to continue expanding on trusted identity propagation, open it up to additional services, and streamline that single identity across different AWS services across like mapped to your organization identities. So in addition to our Identity Center, we have other options for user management. We have things like IAM Federation. We have QuickSight named users, which support namespaces, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. We also have another alternative, which is anonymous users. I'm going to kind of double click on anonymous users for a second here. We've talked so far, leveraging Identity Center, IAM Federation, or QuickSight name users, of the concept of creating a user in QuickSight that mirrors a real person, whether it's an internal customer or an external customer. With anonymous usage, you're able to have readers, people that are consuming dashboards, access those reports, those dashboards anonymously. So this means you don't have to create those users. That has some pricing implications. And it's just another thing to consider when you're evaluating your use case and choosing which type of user management approach to go with. Okay, so this is user management, something that is important to evaluate based on your use case. And in the same lines, we want to kind of look at or think of the concept of centralized enablement and support within the organization. And something that I've seen across all of our successful customers is that they're depending on a central group. It can be small, it can be large, that defines and supports the enablement of organizational intelligence and metrics reporting, dashboards, insights, etc., through the organization. The central group has a vision, it has a strategy, and they're looking to support, based on that approach, all the users within the organization. So what does this mean in practice? It means that you should be exploring concept of like BI Center of Excellence in the organization. That it's a concept that has some fundamental, like an architecture on how you can prosper with BI within the organization, and have one group that trains other users and it teaches and enables other users within the organization to be independent. We also have partners and ProServe. So if you're looking for other options of how do I do this with my organization, I don't have the skills internally, you can work with us and work with our partners to help you define this and implement it within your organization. But I think it's a common it's something that needs to be agreed upon at all levels in the organization, and having that vision, the strategy in a group in the organization that is driving that is imperative for the success of this type of deployment. Next, another common element that needs to be kind of reviewed, analyzed, and thought through in the organization is the concept of self-serve analytics, and to what level do we want to provide self-serve. It's data strategy, and what is our data strategy, and then what type of governance do I want to push down to the organization? Do I want to give people free reign, or do I want to control access to the data? This is all depending on your organization, depending on what industry you're in, and your general philosophy about data. But at the end of the day, defining the right level of self-serve, making sure that it's in line with your data strategy and supportive of enterprise controls and monitoring of the application is going to be critical whichever BI deployment you choose. And some capabilities and some concepts that are going to support this. In QuickSight, outside of QuickSight, you have within QuickSight things like roles, admin, admin pro, author, author pro, reader, reader pro. You have things like custom permissions that allow you to get really granular with what each user is allowed to and not allowed to do in QuickSight. You have asset level for permissions as well as restricted folders. They're going to allow you to be really granular with authorization of assets and collaboration in between users with these assets. These are all knobs that you can configure to align, which level of self-serve with your data strategy and with your asset governance approach. Outside of QuickSight, or integrated with QuickSight within the AWS umbrella, for monitoring, we have things like CloudTrail logs, CloudWatch metrics, EventBridge, and then the REST API data for getting all your metadata. For your data strategy in AWS, we have things like building your own data mesh or data lake, leveraging Redshift, Serverless, Athena, and Glue. And then going deeper into the data strategy evolution, we have data sharing and catalog that is empowered by recently GA capability SageMaker Unified Studio. All these components are critical to really kind of understand where you are with them and what your goals are, and putting the right tools in place to achieve those goals. Lastly, in terms of these common elements that we find everyone needs to think through, we have pricing and licensing with QuickSight. And at the end of the day, it's simple. You just want to optimize your cost, leveraging the different pricing options and features that we have available. So what does this mean in practice? Pro users versus regular users, understanding the benefits and the value that those pro users provide. Things like being able to manage Q&A, things like stories, executive summaries, and scenarios that I just showed are really high value add for these pro users, including access to key business. We have the session versus user-based pricing. So understanding, hey, those readers that are accessing my application, what is going to be the frequency of their access, and which pricing method works best, and then which type of capabilities do we want to include. All those factors come into play when choosing between session-based versus user-based pricing. And ultimately, please speak to your account team for best advice, whether it's in regards to understanding pro versus regular users, whether it's for understanding session versus user-based pricing, or if you have if your usage is beyond what we have in our public pricing, we can work with you in understanding your use case and seeing how we can help you best. So once these common elements have been defined for your organization, then we can start looking at what are these architectures that can be defined and built out in QuickSight. So I'm going to kind of go through a few of these different architectures at a high level, as well as some kind of patterns that we see customers deploying within this architecture. Please note, this is going to be, like I mentioned, high level. The architecture diagrams are simplified for the sake of getting my point across, and they're missing. They might be missing some services, but I think the goal is to really understand the high level architectures and the advantages between them. So if we're looking to deploy enterprise BI and reporting, generative AI BI, The most common approach that we see is to leverage a single account. This is a very simplistic use case. Starting from the right-hand side, we have authors, we have readers, we have administrators that are logging either directly into QuickSight or they're going through Identity Center to go into QuickSight. In this example, we're going straight to QuickSight. We're using Identity Center to authenticate the users with your third-party IDP. And then your data is in Redshift. So we just query the data in Redshift as needed. This is a very simple scenario. This can support 10 users, 100 users, or 100,000 users all within one QuickSight account. It's a little to this simple architecture that are important to understand that I'm going to dig into right now. So within this simple single count architecture, first we know that our customers will have development lifecycle approaches with automation. They might have dev, test, and prod accounts to manage that lifecycle. They might want to version control assets in between each one of those environments, dev, test, prod. So to do this, of course, we're able to roll out this single account architecture, leveraging dev, test, and prod accounts. And in a simple sense, it can look something like this. We're using our APIs and tooling that you can build leveraging their APIs, things like assets as bundle, um, or APIs to describe and to create assets within accounts, or our integration with EventBridge to manage the automation as well as the version control of assets between your dev account, your test account, and your prod account. You can have all of them pointing to the same IDP. You can have maybe a dev and test IDP that you point to your dev and test accounts to. You don't have to create all the users and all the accounts. You only create and provision the users in each dev, test, and prod account as needed. So you can keep your dev and test accounts light, and then your prod accounts is where really you have the bulk of the users. Another thing to mention in this, and I should have mentioned maybe in the pricing page, but when you're using pro users, you can do consolidated billing within the organization. So all of the pro users across different accounts, in this case, dev, test, and product, only get billed once. So yeah, if you want to have a single account, yet you have to have development lifecycle set up, you can by leveraging multiple accounts and our APIs to migrate from one environment to the other. Next. So let's say that within that one account, you want to empower different teams within the organization to securely access their data. Excuse me. Pardon me. You're able to do so. You're able, as the central BI team that is deploying QuickSight to the organization, leveraging, for example, groups to authorize and have different users in different folders, which is what we're using here. We're using the concept of restricted folders to define each individual domain or group within the organization. Looking at this simple architecture diagram here, we got a finance team, a sales team, and an HR team. Each one of these groups has data sources, data sets, analysis, and dashboards. One of the core tenets of the restricted folders is that assets located in the restricted folder cannot be moved or shared outside of the restricted folder. So this is going to allow you to deploy to ensure that governance and controls on your data that are defined at the team, at the domain, at the department level are enforced and managed by that team, and the assets are not moving around between different teams or folders. So there's tight control over the assets that get deployed here. Now, diving deeper into the restricted folder usage, you might have scenarios where you want to have more fine-grained permissions on assets within one folder. For example, maybe in the finance team or the HR team, you have a dashboard that you need to share with everyone in the enterprise. So you're able to do this with the restricted folders, leveraging the concept of subfolders. So in this simple example here, we have a finance folder, call it the root folder of the finance team. And then the root folder, the finance admin, is going to have owner permissions on that root folder. So they're the ones that can configure all the folders, create data sources, and provision all the assets for all the users to do their own self-serve analytics. You have two subfolders in this case, in this simple scenario. This can be much more complex. I've simplified it here for the sake of the presentation. But let's say that you have one folder that has all of your data assets. In this data assets folder, there's permissions that are inherited. So from the root, we inherit down the folder. So the finance admin will have owner permissions here. And then you have an additional permission on this folder for the finance analyst, and they are a contributor permission. This means that they are able to create data sources, create data sets, and create analysis within this folder. This also means that they're able to publish an analysis to a different folder. So enters the second folder, the second subfolder in our finance root folder, which is going to be a dashboard folder. So you have one folder, the data assets on the left, where you put all your raw components. And then you have another folder on the right where you have all of your dashboards. This dashboards folder is going to have different permissions than the data assets folder on the left. And in particular, it's going to have a group of users that are going to have viewer permissions on the dashboards in this folder. So what this will allow, or it'll create, is that those readers, those viewers, those personas that need to access the dashboard that do not need to access all the other assets will only see the dashboards when they get into QuickSight. Publishing, apologies for the spelling error, publishing from analysis to a dashboard in another folder is done through the UI very easily. So any contributor can choose which subfolder to put the assets they're creating, which will define who will be able to see it based on those subfolder permissions. So again, this is a very simple example of leveraging subfolders to manage granular permissions. Most organizations in real life are going to have dozens of subfolders at different levels to support different levels of self-serve, as well as different sharing to different users. So this is again another key pattern that users within one administrators within one single account can use to deploy to multiple departments, multiple teams, or projects within a large enterprise. Another common pattern that we're seeing is the quite popular data mesh. So in the words of Zema Dagan, it's a decentralized approach for sharing, accessing, and managing analytics data in complex, large-scale environments. Goals are, it's emphasizing the domain-oriented ownership. Product is the focus, and you treat data as a product, and you want to empower your users with self-serve yet federated governance of their data. So with QuickSight, with the concept that we've talked about before, even within a single account, you're able to leverage a data mesh. And this simple diagram here, you have a producer account in AWS that has maybe Redshift. It's a finance team. They're producing all this curated data that they've shared out with the organization. You may also have another producer that is pumping out sales data. Now, within one within one centralized BI account, within that one restricted folder that the finance team has, they might have some data sources that are from the producer finance. They might also have some data sources from sales. They're able to, with the Redshift data sharing and connecting and creating data sources to each one of those, they're able to join that data together in a cohesive data set, build an analysis, and build out a dashboard. That's going to take into account the data being shared from different groups within the organization via their data mesh. So we have some very large enterprises that are doing this approach, leveraging data sharing, leveraging multiple accounts, as well as data sources and folders to achieve and kind of integrate QuickSight into their data mesh. So I've talked so far about single account approach to enterprise BI. Now, it's not the only approach that we support and our customers are leveraging. We also have customers that use a multi-account approach. So in this case, let's say that every team or every department has their own account, which has QuickSight in it. So every team is an administrator of their own QuickSight. In this simple diagram here, I have kind of three teams or three departments. I have team A and team B, and then you have your identity and BI team in the middle. In order for this approach to be successful and to be smooth, most of our customers that employ it will have a web application in between the different QuickSight accounts and those authors and readers. This web application will kind of point you to the right place depending on what type of activity you're about to do. So if you have access to multiple environments, the web application can load for you via our embedded application the right environment for you to do, consume, and or build assets. So I wanted to show a quick kind of like, and I apologize for this slide because I know I understand it's not best practices, but we're looking at a high level, a variety of factors, and I just want to focus on a few key things between centralized and decentralized. First of all, I would say my recommendation for this type of approach is to use a single account deployment. User management, it's kind of the same for both. And in terms of business intelligence and an infrastructure team to support the application, like I mentioned at the beginning, both like there should be effort no matter what type of approach from the BI infra team, but with a single account, there is a lower effort to set up and maintain. It still does require automation and or manual effort to provision the restricted folders, to provision data assets access and define asset permissions. With multi-account, that effort level goes up. So there's more effort involved. In terms of self-serve, single account has the best experience. Multi-account will have a fragmented experience, and it requires building that portal to streamline that UX. In terms of data strategy and pricing, the same approaches apply to both single account and multi-account. In terms of pricing and licensing, for both of these approaches, the best value normally ends up being the user-based pricing, where you pay a flat fee for authors and readers, and in particular, those readers for $3 get unlimited dashboards and unlimited Q&A questions. And if they're pro users, they can upgrade to pro and get those pro features plus unlimited dashboards and unlimited Q&A questions. Another kind of interesting side note is that the multi-account does provide clean cost allocation. So that's maybe an advantage or reasoning for doing a multi-account approach. Okay, so we focus so far on taking a look at centralized or decentralized for internal or enterprise BI. We're going to add another quick layer of complexity to this by taking a look at BI, reporting, and generative AI and BI as a service. So the architecture gets slightly more complicated. This is the single account approach to providing BI as a service. Starting on the right-hand side of the diagram, we see that we have external users and we have internal users. The external users are your customers or your customers' customers. They're going to be accessing via a web application. You might have their own Cognito that manages the users within that external application. And then they're going to be accessing QuickSight that is embedded in the web app through our SDK. In parallel, you're also going to have internal users. These internal users most likely will access QuickSight directly through the QuickSight portal. And in this case, we're going to leverage IAM Federation to integrate with to federate users to the right role from your third-party IDP. This approach allows you it's a simple approach that lets you have all internal and external users in the same account. It leverages different auth methods for the different users. So those external users are going to be what's called QuickSight users. And this means you can leverage namespaces, which we'll talk about in a second. The internal users are leveraging IAM federated users. One of the big disadvantages of this approach is that you're not able to configure Identity Center, because currently, as of today, Identity Center does not support namespaces. So if you have external users, those external users require namespaces. This is the only approach, and you have to use IAM federation for those internal users. So there's a shared pattern here that I mentioned, I alluded to. I want to make sure that we understand what it is. It's a concept of namespaces. So within this same single account approach, you might have three different namespaces. Starting from the bottom left of this diagram, you have your internal users. They're part of the default namespace. You likely have authors, you might have some readers. These are internal organizational users that are creating and sharing assets within and to internal users. Now, you might have customer A and customer B. Again, so apologies, another typo there. But those two different customers, those two separate namespaces, are going to help you in isolating the users, not the assets, but the users across the namespaces. So in this approach, how we recommend doing it is you have your internal users build out the dashboards, and then you can have tooling, automation, that is going to publish or kind of recreate those assets for the different users in different namespaces. Or they can all leverage the same dashboard across the different namespaces. So the assets can be shared, or you can recreate assets specific for the different customers in different namespaces. So the namespace is a very common approach, whether it's single account, in one account or in multiple accounts. For embedded use cases, it's the way to isolate users across from each other, creating tenants and handling multi-tenancy. Now, the last architecture diagram that I'll share here is taking a look at multi-account approach with for BI as a service. And here you have two different accounts. You have your external account, your internal account. You have those users accessing from the external through the web app and getting into QuickSight, and you likely have Cognito managing your users. And then you have in the internal account, in the separate account, your internal users accessing QuickSight. In this case, you for sure have tooling that is publishing or migrating or pushing assets from your prod internal account to your prod external account for those external users to access. Quick comparison in the two. So first of all, for BI as a service, I recommend, and my preferred approach is to have different or separate accounts. One of the key things is this will let you have IDC, Identity Center, for your internal use cases, and QuickSight named users for your external use cases. This approach, the multi-account approach, does require having more advanced automation to manage users, namespaces, and assets. But this automation gives you additional security and robustness to your application, especially by isolating internal and external users in different accounts. Both approaches promote self-serve in their own way. Both approaches will support your data strategy and governance. Key thing is that the single account will not have identity center support, while the multi-account would. And in terms of pricing and licensing, the multi-account will give you the most flexibility. Sorry, it'll give you the most flexibility by allowing you to pick the pricing method per account that is most optimal. So here's again a quick comparison between the two approaches for BI as a service.